All right. Well, Rob, very nice to meet you. Glad to be able to speak with you, interview you, and go through some of the most recent events that have been going on in your life. How are you feeling today? What's going on?
I'm 8.8 out of 10. So you are my third interview today.
Nice.
I've just finished one of my books, Money Matrix, and I've got some people proofreading it for me who I've just
Nice.
been sitting down with. Life's pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah, life's what you make it.
Yes, it is. You're very much in that perspective of, as I've watched through so many of your different videos and such, you're always, and it's great to be like that in the perspective of, even if something bad happens, the interview doesn't go how you'd like it to, you're very much coming from the perspective of, I'm going to make the best of it no matter what. And even if it's bad, there's something good I can use in my business or for views or for something to make it work out anyways.
Yeah, so there's something called the dual use paradox, which
Mm-hmm.
is the two-sided paradox of the use of something. So if you think about AI, the upside of AI is obviously speed, power. If you think
Mm-hmm.
about AI in health, it could be our own doctor that could
Right.
diagnose and 3D print, some kind of solution in the form of a pill or a
Mm-hmm.
cast. But AI can also execute a kill order against another
Right.
human, or it could if we allow it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe all life has dual use paradox, which means every downside has an upside, every upside has a downside. So, for example, some of my hardest, most difficult, most obtuse, combative guests have
Mm-hmm.
also been the best for um, virality or
Right.
when people say, I had a guy interviewing me today and he was talking about the Jake Paul episode. And he's like, why wasn't
Mm-hmm.
the guy was being a twat? Why wasn't he just a decent guy? And I said, well, if he was a decent guy, you wouldn't be talking about that one of my 1,000 episodes. You'd be talking
Right.
about the
Right.
decent guys. So
Yep.
I try and
Yep.
take that attitude into life.
Mm-hmm.
And, in every stressing hides a blessing. And I think if you have that mentality, then you
Mm-hmm.
make the most out of life.
Right. No, I agree for sure. And speaking of interviews that were kind of like that, we just talked with Harry about the Dodge interview, and he kind of pressed you a few different times. Do you? Because some people enjoy it. Do you enjoy the pressure? Do you like the fight, or would you rather just have a very melancholy, kind of more chill interview usually?
I mean, look, I'm open. I see it as my
Mm-hmm.
job to serve the interviewer and answer their questions. Um, so I'll go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
The more spice and heat and ding dong and ping pong there is, the more likely it is to get good views. Because that
True that.
race to 100,000 in a matter of you know hours, stroke days.
Right.
Whereas maybe some of my what might be deemed to be a little bit more balanced or intellectual interviews might have
Mm-hmm.
had 1/10 of the views.
Right.
And
Right.
Dodge is a friend, so he's developing his own style as an interviewer, and
Mm-hmm.
he's doing quite well. I felt like at times he didn't let me answer his question because he interrupted
Fully.
me to ask another one and interrupted me to ask another one. But it's his show, and I did my best to answer them all. And it was interesting because many entrepreneurs messaged me loving the content. But
Right.
if you look at that video, there's quite a lot of criticism for me in that video.
I saw there was both sides criticisms. Like people are like, oh, I haven't heard of this guy, but I wasn't sure how I liked his answers. But yeah, it was a definite. He cut you short sometimes, and you were trying to give your best answer. It was a mix and match. But I mean, overall, I thought it was well. I thought it was great.
Yeah, well, if you think about what content he does now, and if you look
Mm-hmm.
at the sort of, the ex-drug dealers and the criminals and all that, I'm not sure that's my target demographic.
Yeah, it's not exactly spot on, I would
No,
say.
and I can't imagine they're going to go and buy my courses and listen
Right,
to
right. Hey,
podcasts.
maybe they'll hustle better. They're gonna hustle better once they go through your
Yeah, well,
content.
actually, they could learn a fair bit from me, but obviously they weren't.
Right.
Some of them weren't prepared to. So I just accept that. That's fine. But it got me out to a new audience. And look, the critters, the critics, the trolls, the haters, and the wankers, they're all great for virality. There's plenty of people
Right.
who sit on the fence and don't leave a comment, and you don't know that they follow you or they exist. I have no problem with it. I really enjoy it. As far as I'm concerned, everyone's entitled to an opinion about me.
Right.
Just because I don't agree with it. And if they want to say it in an obnoxious way, that's just representative of where they are. But I'd rather
Right.
have a load of criticism than no comments at all. 100 wankers is better than no comments.
It means you got to have some. If your message isn't polarizing in some way or another, you don't really have a strong message. And I think to be an entrepreneur and to be in business, you have to have a strong message of some kind. It's like why Grant Cardone gets so much hate. He gets also a lot of love, and he gets very, very polarizing figure. And I wanted to talk about and actually compliment you kind of on this topic because I think truly, I think I'm a decent person at seeing who's transparent in themselves, in how they speak, in their mannerisms. You are one of the, both when you get interviewed and when you interview other people, you seem very true yourself, very honest, very transparent, just yourself. Like you truly are yourself. Is that something that you've learned as you've kind of crafted your personality over the years? Or is that just kind of just who you are?
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. I think
Yeah.
it's taken me a while to get to that space.
Hmm.
Like as I sit here now in my mid 40s, I do feel quite confident in what I've done in the last 17 years, in
Hmm.
property and business. I feel like I obviously want to achieve more, John, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but I don't feel like I have anything more to prove. I feel like I
Right.
can be authentic, i.e., speak as I speak
Hmm.
privately, and I'm okay with being ridiculed for being myself. Um,
Hmm.
Now, weirdly, when I was in my teens and early 20s, I probably had quite a lot of authenticity. The problem was
Hmm.
I was quite obnoxious and closed-minded and jealous, and I always thought I was right. So
Hmm.
it was weird because ignorance in some ways was bliss back then,
Right.
because I wasn't second guessing and worried about what to say or worried about upsetting anyone.
Right.
But I was also quite ignorant, and then I
Hmm.
went on this big journey of personal development and got a therapist and learned from all the big gurus in America and sort of unpicked my personality and realized that was that ignorance from me was a
Hmm.
protective mechanism, and I had to
Right.
peel that away and then find out what was beneath that, what that was protecting, and
Right.
why I felt the need to protect those parts about myself.
Hmm.
And then through the main vehicle of business and entrepreneurship, start to then think about who I want to be, what traits I want to
Right.
portray, what I'm comfortable with showing of myself.
Right.
So it was like a breaking down and a rebuilding up. And
Hmm.
one of the things I love about business is it's real time feedback. If
Yeah.
I do something smart and I make money, I've got real time feedback in the form of profit, and I'm going to do more of it. If I do something or say
Hmm.
something stupid and I lose money,
You'll find out real quick.
yeah, you do find out very quickly. And so it's a great mirror that reflects back to you your behaviors. Now,
Hmm.
going back to the dual use paradox, any behavior or character trait that you exhibit has equal upsides and downsides. If you're
Right.
a people pleaser, that can be good for getting on with people, but you can become a repressor. And if you please everyone else, you
Yep.
repress your own expression.
Hmm.
So I guess I just tried to become aware of the dual paradox, and then aware of how I'm acting in the moment and making sure I'm not over exaggerating or
Right.
minimizing my true self.
Yeah, and you do an excellent job of that, and that's why I think I noticed and I saw in you is you've learned to communicate how you feel and how you work with yourself out very, very well, which is nice to see because it makes pleasant, good conversation a lot of the times. Now you mentioned your book. Along with your book, and maybe you want to get more into that. What else have you been thinking for the disruptors, for your businesses, for your training? You have your training company, your real estate. Is there another big move? And does it go along with the book? What's the next big move for Rob Moore and kind of your community you've built over the last, like you said, 17 years, or how long? It's been a long time now.
Yeah. I mean, writing my 19th and now my 20th book,
Nice.
you could say that's a big move, or you could say that's just an evolution of what I've been doing for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished, just not long ago, a charity boxing match, and we raised nearly £250,000. I'm on to my next challenge now, so I just like to challenge myself, move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping to get my training business to 25 million sterling, which is what, $30
Nice.
million this year. We're a bit behind for that, but we're well ahead of last year. Um, yeah, so
You're making moves. You're making moves. You're doing.
yeah, I'm
I have a.
always looking to progress with, interviewing really interesting people. I think we've got Will I
Mhm.
Am, David Icke,
Nice,
Andrew
nice,
Tate. We've got some big
nice.
guests. Patrick Bet David. Who else have we got, Harry?
I love
Paddy
Patrick.
Pimlet, who's big in martial arts.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a constant movement. By the way, they're not all actually, whilst they're agreed, they're not date booked in. So,
Right.
watch this space for those.
Nice.
Trying to help as many people as possible. I mean, I do a lot more money related content now. And I'd like to
Hmm.
have an impact of, I'd like to have at least 6 million followers. I'm currently at 2 and 2, I think,
Hmm.
ish, maybe a bit more. I'd like to at least have 6 and be well known as being a money specialist, because it's a subject I think needs more transparency, shall we say.
Oh, totally. People avoid it and don't like to talk about it.
Yeah,
Depending on
and
where they're at,
the
even in
financial
business. Yeah.
system, is opaque to say the least. So, yeah,
I have a question regarding that. How much do you think it is the system or people's own fault? Because I know where I'm at on like self responsibility, but there's always the argument of the system is out to get you, but also you're kind of playing in the system, aren't you? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
um, okay, so because one of the books I've just finished is Money Matrix,
Hmm.
and I call out some things about the system which I acknowledge I may do myself,
Hmm.
but I like to think I'd do them more ethically. But I don't think they serve humanity. I think they serve central banks, for example. Their job is,
Right.
bank's job is not to look after your money; it is to make
Yeah.
profit.
Yeah.
And modern monetary theory and monetary policy is just,
Hmm.
devaluing fiat currency and just
Yes.
print more of it, which devalues it even more. And that's,
Hmm.
that debt spiral that we're in is unsustainable. And a lot of people call it a Ponzi scheme, which is why
Right. Well, it basically is.
yeah, because, the later you make money, the less it's worth. If
Right.
you imagine what a
Right.
millionaire was worth 100 years ago versus a millionaire now.
So are you along the lines of business is speed and money is speed, getting it as fast as possible, as soon as possible? So before it can be inflated, before it can be devalued, you want to have people making it and having it right now?
Yeah, yes, in part. Money loves speed and hates friction. But
Hmm.
also, there is something called get rich quick, which means if you try to make money too fast, you are open to schemes and scams. So it
Yes.
has to be as quick as possible because money is worth always more today than it is
Hmm.
tomorrow.
Right.
So what I say to people is, at the start, you exchange your time and energy and work for money. And
Hmm.
then as soon as you can, you invest in your money to get your money working for you.
Yes.
And you get paid probably in fiat currency, maybe a bit in crypto, but probably in fiat. And you immediately want to get it out of fiat, which is a
Hmm.
depreciating liability, into an asset. I buy watches, I buy cars, I buy real estate,
Right.
I put money into the stock market, and I'm immediately trying to, at the very least, protect it from inflation or
Right.
devaluation. And money as cash in the bank is devaluing, even while interest rates are going up. It's still devaluing. Interest rates are still
Hmm.
lower than actual inflation.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, these are some of the things I want to help people to understand.
Right.
I don't see any reason why anyone would need a financial advisor. Surely you should
Right.
know enough about money to manage your own money.
Right. Right.
You don't have a
Is
parental
that
advisor. You
right?
shouldn't need a financial advisor. You should take,
Have some level of basic competency when it comes to your money.
yes, and that's your responsibility. That's not the banks or the governments or the education
Right.
system's responsibility. It's not. They've
Hmm.
got selfish motives. You've got selfish motives. So you have to
Right.
take
Right.
responsibility. So on this instance, I don't like if the banks would sell me a money printing machine for 10 million quid that could have in my office and print money whenever I want, I'd buy it. I'd buy it for 20 million. I'd buy it for 50 million.
Right.
So it's not the bank's responsibility to teach me how to manage my money.
Right.
They just want to manage my money and make money out of my money.
Yep. Yep.
So I'm going to learn how to manage my own money and make money out of their money. Fuck them.
Yeah, and that's the best thing you can do. With that being said, what do you think is the most important feeling people get when they finally get enough money that money is no longer really an issue, where it's no longer the only thing that's on their mind? What's kind of the greatest benefit people should really focus on
Well,
feeling better?
feeling and benefit, probably two different
Hmm.
things. I think if you can get out of debt fairly quickly, then there's a great sense of relief. And
Hmm.
if you can become financially independent, I found a
Hmm.
great sense of gratitude in that. Gratitude
Right.
that I'm in a privileged position that most people aren't in, because most people have to work for a living and I don't. I choose to. But also gratitude in that I'm pleased with myself because I
Right.
achieved this myself. I didn't win the lottery. I didn't inherit money.
Hmm.
So a sense of self-worth is quite linked to your
Hmm.
net worth, especially if you've earned it yourself. Sense of gratitude, a sense of relief when you get out of debt.
Hmm.
A sense of independence.
Hmm.
Like if you don't rely or need anyone, and you're
Right.
able to do what you want, where you want, when you want, with who you want. That. Most adults should be independent, but they're not, and that's a
Right.
shame. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna say it's something that I've grown to appreciate more and more because I've been mostly free since I've been really young. And recently, my grandma, she has a heart problem. She's cancer. I can get up and go. I can go see her anytime. My brother just had twins 2 days ago. I can get to go see them anytime. And I think that's something that you learn to really appreciate. Is if something happens personally, or your friends have a party you want to go to, anything, you can go and just not worry about the job, about anything else going on. Now, I'm also curious about, because in I think throughout the world, and I also think throughout the United States, there is in some portion of the population a disdain for the rich, a disdain and a almost like a hate for people who have accumulated wealth, even though the average person who's wealthy is like above 50 and they've worked their entire lives for it. I guess for people who are listening, what do you think is something that they can feel instead, or a way they can look at this rich versus the poor issue differently, so it's not just all these greedy, money hungry people who are the worst? Like give me some of your perspective on that.
Yeah. So there is no rich versus poor in this world. It's not like a football league. And I think, yes, there is a division, a dividing, an ever increasing
Right.
divide in class and wealth, which is a complicated subject. Um, what I would say is understand what money is and isn't. And my most recent book I'm writing is called Money Loves You.
Hmm.
And imagine if you drove down a really expensive road and you parked outside a really expensive house
Hmm.
and you thought about who is that person who can afford that house. And I would ask you as an individual now to think about what kind of person you would imagine could afford that expensive house and that expensive car. Now,
Hmm.
that person that you imagine is a figment of your imagination that you have constructed based on media upbringing, geography, parenting,
Yep.
and everything else, because you don't know who that person is.
Hmm.
If you think they inherited it and they were lucky, well, you're probably wrong about that, but that would be your own biases and judgments. I would think, well, they must be entrepreneurial and they must have done something useful and meaningful for society and they must employ a lot of
Right.
people and pay a lot of taxes.
Right.
and they must be like, I want to go and knock on the door and know what they know. But I never used to think like that when I was an entrepreneur. You think, oh, they're lucky, they
Mhm.
got given it. They're probably a drug dealer, you know, and all this.
Who sometimes they do make some pretty good money.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that you judge about that human, about who they are and how they made that money, is a figment of your imagination. And anything that is repelling you from that person, you need to examine, why is that repelling you from them?
Hmm.
Because that person is no different to you. You could exhibit the traits and do what that person does. But when
Hmm.
you disown their traits and you go on a moral high ground of, I am
Right.
better because I didn't make millions by doing this evil thing. So what you do is, money isn't moral, money isn't conscious, money doesn't judge.
Hmm.
Money is a tool made by humanity. It's an effective tool, it's a lever. And so if you
Hmm.
create value and understand how the flow of money works and its neutrality, and you have a neutral view of money, then you can start to own the parts that the millionaires have and disown the
Right.
parts that the broke people have, and start
Right.
building wealth. But, I don't see a rich person or a poor person as a better person. I see them as a
Right.
different person. And a poor
Yeah.
person might be really good at chess. They just didn't know how to
Hmm.
monetize it. A rich
Right.
person might be really good at sales, or they might have created a great product. The rich person and the poor person are both good at things. It's just the rich person has figured out how to monetize it, create a business around
Yeah.
it, and gone through the pain of building the business and paying the taxes and paying the staff. And so rather than looking up or down at people, looking up like, oh, I could never do that, that billionaire is amazing, or looking down
Hmm.
like, oh, that millionaire must be a rich, greedy, evil capitalist bastard, both of those projections mean that you disown the parts in that person that you have yourself.
Right.
And this is caused by society, upbringing, parents, media.
Yep.
If you took everything I've got and put me in the middle of nowhere, I would know I can sell, I can market, I can create a good story, I can build a business, I can create a
Yep.
product. I would believe in myself and my ability to do that,
Hmm.
because I've transcended all these limiting beliefs.
Yep. And from my experience too, basically what it sounds like, a part of what you're saying at least, is that wealth seems to accentuate the characteristics you already have. Through the extremely, some of the people I know that are very wealthy, it just makes them more of what they are. So if they were a douche, they're just more of they're a super rich douche, or they're more of what they already were. For example, with you, if you were stuck in the middle of the desert with nothing, you'd still be Rob. You'd still be kind of a genuine, kind person who still cares about other people. So it just makes you a little bit more of what you already are, which is maybe a reason why, for example, you and Sam had that fight. You're able to raise money for charity. By the way, are you recovering good? Are you back to eating normal?
Yeah, I mean, I've put on 2 or 3 kilos, but I've kept off some of the
Okay.
weight. I'm still training. I
Hmm.
was ill last week.
Still training?
Other than that, I'm still
Nice.
boxing 3 times a week. I'm
Nice.
training for my new challenge now. So yeah, I didn't want it to
Who's the
be.
new challenge?
I'm doing a high rocks challenge, which is kind of like an
Nice.
insane CrossFit challenge. I've
Awesome.
got 3 months left of training, and I'm doing pretty good on that. I think it's important to challenge yourself and have accountability. I fought in front of 1,800 people. We raised £250,000. I fought someone a lot bigger than me. So, I trained hard for that.
Yeah, no, and that's good. It's from what I've seen too. It seems like what you do in your health, what you do in your business, what you do in every part of your life. It's all related. It all correlates, and one of them rewards the other. So because you're extremely fit, because you watch what you eat, you have more energy. You're able to work on your business more. You're able to do more because you accomplish that. You have more money, which you can use for reinvesting, and everything else is kind of affected in a very, very awesome way. Now, I want to go quickly back to the books. The two new books. One's coming out very soon, I hope. Do you cover a little bit of taxes? Do you cover crypto? Do you cover anything with AI? Can you give us more detail on what's in the books? What's kind of the main focus, other than, of course, just getting more comfortable with money and realizing it's your tool versus your enemy?
Yeah, so the 2 books I'm writing at the moment, or have written and I'm writing, is Money Matrix and
Hmm.
Money Loves You. They're going to take a little while to come out because they need to be edited and published.
Hmm.
Um, so, your questions. Did I write much about tax? I wrote enough about tax to get people to think about reducing tax. I talked about the sort of 4 or 5 main areas where we reduce our tax: buying cars in an LLP, research and development, capital allowances, etc. But of course, I didn't write percentages or rates because they change every 6 months. So what I've done is an associated sort of written asset where I can update all the numbers and figures.
Right.
You know, a lot of people get enraged when rich people avoid tax. But rich people took a risk to start a business and generate a lot of tax revenue through VAT and employers, national insurance.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be different in America, but they'll be the same but different.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, a lot of people think rich don't pay taxes. It's only really the super rich that don't pay much percentage of tax. The rich and the small business owner and the middle class rich and the new rich, they pay loads of taxes. I pay millions in taxes.
A lot of tax.
But the way I see it is, if my government deployed tax well and invested the capital well, I'd happily pay. I wouldn't happily pay 70% of what I earn and what I spend, which is what it is at the moment. I'd pay a flat 20% happily. But they deploy it really badly. There's a big hole in most of the services in the UK financially. I think it's really bad. Terrible.
Have you ever thought about getting into politics?
No.
No, too much of a mess?
No.
Well, you're influential and you have a great personality.
Yeah,
and
but then
you
surely
very clearly.
The problem with politics is you can't change anything. You think you can.
Difficult. It's very difficult.
Name me a politician that's come in and really changed something in the last 10 years.
Right.
Like really changed something.
Right, and you're right. And when you're out of power, who comes back in to
and they go
things
grey
back
because
to
it's
how?
one of the most stressful jobs in the world.
Right.
Like I could go in and bang the drum for 4 years probably only about getting better financial education in schools. But, you know, the governors and the head of the Bank of England and even the people who puppet string them, and they're never going to let me pass any useful laws or change an outdated curriculum. So I might as well just be an entrepreneur, not a politician, be able to say and do what I want, and start my own school system or my own education system. Like if I was a politician, I couldn't write Money Matrix. I'd be fired. So I want to change the world, but I actually think it's harder to change the world when you're a politician.
Right, it's harder to do it almost through the system. It's better to do it just as an individual.
In the UK, like it's different in America, but in the UK, I'd have to either be Labour or Conservative, and they're both shit. And I'd have to build up through the ranks locally and go and knock on doors. You know, I spent 17 years being an entrepreneur, building up a load of influence. I wouldn't be throwing that all away. But also, you can't run your business when you're a politician. And you don't get paid very well when you're a politician.
No, you don't. Well,
people don't fucking trust politicians. They don't trust them for shit. I tell you what I would do, though, is if I was a very powerful politician, is afterwards, I'd go and do the speaker circuit and charge £1 million a speech.
Yeah. Many of them do that. Many make whole careers after being president, making a lot more money after being president.
I'd never... As long as someone wants to pay it and they're offering value, I don't begrudge them.
Right. Yeah, and if someone's willing to pay it, I mean, politics is very, very complex. And yeah, I think at this point, the systems that have built up everything, because, I feel like, do you think the United States is worse off, or where you're off is worse off?
Well, in the UK, no one person can run for prime minister. Whereas in America, it's easier for an individual a la Donald Trump.
Right.
And I think that, therefore, the American political system is better because our current prime minister and our previous prime minister, there was no votes. It was chosen for by the incumbent party, and that's completely wrong.
I did not know that.
Yeah. You have to be Labour or Conservative. And then if through the tenure one resigns,
Mm-hmm.
They internally vote who the new one is.
Right. Which
So
is
we've had no
that's
choice in our
not
last two prime ministers.
right. Right. Which is not by the people at all.
No, there's no democracy. It does not exist.
No.
There is a
No.
monopoly. There is no democracy here in the UK.
Right.
That being
No.
said,
It
though,
does.
people like me, creators, influencers, entrepreneurs with a bit of a social media following, we have a bit of a voice and a bit of power now.
Mm-hmm.
I have more followers than virtually all politicians.
Do you see it as your job to have a voice, to spread positivity, to have messaging on money, have messaging on personal health, have messaging on all these different things?
Yeah, I mean, look, my personal vision is to help as many people on this planet get better financial knowledge. My foundation
Mm-hmm.
helps young and underprivileged people start their businesses and make money. So anything that I can do to educate people so that they
Mm-hmm.
can have better financial tools and resources, is fulfilling my mission.
Right.
And
Right.
generally, going through the school system is the opposite of that. And
Yeah.
generally, the media and PR around rich people is the opposite of that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in the UK, we're very reserved about talking about money, and you're
Mm-hmm.
deemed as greedy and evil if you even mention money. And I want to change
Mm-hmm.
that. It's not a taboo. It's not a faux pas. There's nothing wrong with talking about money. Money is one of our most important tools. It's an amazing tool, probably as good as the wheel in terms of the
Yeah.
leverageability of a human invention. It's right up there with penicillin and any other
Mm-hmm.
amazing tool for leverage that we've created.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yet, no one knows how to use it properly. Or most people, the rich people do. Most people don't know
It
how to
seems
use
like
it properly.
most people, yeah, don't know how to use it in their personal lives, let alone managing taxes, let alone how to invest it, let alone any of these different things. And with your investment, does the two books that you're working on, do they go into investing as well? Because you mentioned
Yeah,
taxes.
yeah.
Hmm.
So in Money
Nice.
Matrix, the raises the problem of the monetary system, the banks, the media, the corporations, and the governments. And then it talks about what I think are fundamentally opaque, ulterior motives, I would say, if I'm being kind, scams, I would
Hmm.
say, if I'm not being kind. Um, and then once I've done that, I give solutions, strategies, and tactics to help people
Awesome.
play the banks at its own game. I play the banks at its own game. Whenever the banks print more money to reduce its own debt, it also reduces my own debt because I have tens of millions of pounds worth of mortgages.
Right.
I had 3 million paid off one year, three and just under 3 million
Hmm.
paid off the next year, when inflation was double digits in the UK. So I did all
Hmm.
right out of them printing and devaluing money because I learned how to play the system. I
Right.
do not leave my money in fiat currency. I didn't have much money that went down in value
Yeah.
35% like everyone did over 3 years
Hmm.
because I didn't leave any of it in fiat currency. It was in gold,
Yeah.
in watches, in cars, in property, in art, in anything else but fiat
Yeah.
currency.
I think the biggest issue is so many people is such short-term thinking. That's one of the most important skills. I think there's a lot of important skills that entrepreneurs and people develop. One of them, I think, number one is communication. Communication to me, how you negotiate, how you talk with others, your spouse, your kids, making deals in business. Communication is number one. But number two, I think, is long-term thinking versus the short-term. Can you kind of go into your mindset over that and why that's important for money, why it's important to all parts of life? Because from my experience, it is the difference between even making an investment in the first place, because people think it's useless because, well, I have to wait 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but they don't realize the full term potential of what that will make. So can you kind of go into that some?
Yeah, long time horizon is one of the traits of the rich, and short time horizon is one of the traits of the poor. And there's various reasons. One of them is the law of compounding. And the law of compounding is essentially um, money making more of itself,
Yeah.
or the direction of momentum continuing at an equal or greater speed. So there are some
Hmm.
universal laws which I think if you understand them and obey them and link them to money, you're going to make more money. Now, the problem in society is we've created human laws, and human laws are breakable, biased, um,
Hmm.
whereas natural laws are unbreakable. and unbiased.
Right.
So if you think of the law of inertia, which is Newton's first law, a body in motion tends to stay in motion, and a body at rest tends to stay at rest, which means when you start something, it's hard, it's heavy, it's got friction.
Mm-hmm.
When you've been doing something for a long time, you've got a lot of momentum, a lot of velocity, a lot of speed.
Yep.
It takes time to build up the momentum and velocity and speed, just like think about a rocket taking off.
Right.
So if you start and stop and start and stop and start and stop, you never increase the speed and reduce the friction, whether it's in investing or compounding or saving or building a business. So long-term horizon allows you to increase the speed, reduce the friction, get compounding, which is money making more of itself.
Yeah.
And also long-term horizons. To have a long-term horizon means you have to have discipline and emotional regulation and management in the short term. And those that don't have discipline or emotional regulation, they will drink their money away. They will sniff their money away. They will gamble their money away. They will spend their money away. They will give their money away. They will squander their money away. Whereas people who can control their emotions can manage their money. They get a little bit of money, they invest it in the S&P 500 instead of buying depreciating liabilities, for example. So, these are some of the laws around money. And, look, money changes form. But for me, one of the laws of money is if you want to make money, and it's back to your initial question, you need to get it out of depreciating liabilities. Well, ideally, you never put it in depreciating liabilities in the first place.
In the first place, right.
But fiat currency that you get paid in is a depreciating liability because it goes down in value. So you might earn it in a depreciating liability. Hopefully, it's only going down a few percent a year, so you've got time. Because normally inflation is 2 or 3%. And then quickly, before it's gone down in value, you get it into an appreciating asset. Property, stocks, business. I like watches, I like cars. Not all my cars go up, but most of them don't really go down. And I buy them in an LLP and I get the tax write-offs anyway. So, the first car I bought in my LLP was a Lamborghini Aventador. And that was 300 and something £1,000 new. I paid $255 for that, so $300,000. Now, if I'd have paid that after tax, that would have cost me 600 gross to pay 300 net. Yeah. But because I bought it in the company and I paid it after tax, it cost me 300 net. Yeah. It's fucking twice as much.
Right. Yeah, and with that being said too, I'm curious about which of your purchases, either watches or cars, which one do you like more? And of the two, which one do you have like a special watch that you just love that you're proud of? That's the best.
Okay, so I probably shouldn't say this, but I do keep it secure. But I have a Richard Mille RM72, and that's currently 255,000. It's a bit smaller than the old RM11 that I had. And even it's probably more a favourite of mine of all my APs and Pateks. So Richard Mille RM72 is probably my favourite watch.
Do you wear it often?
Not really. I mean, it's hard to wear a £250,000 watch nowadays.
Yeah, right.
So, and also the insurance on something like that is thousands, and they don't give you much wriggle room. You can't just leave it in your house.
Right.
So, and then I think about watches or cars, and then I think, well, why can't I have both? You only live once. If you're not interested in watches, don't buy watches. Or buy Rolex Daytona Steel and store them in a safe and just use them as an asset class. All I've really done, I love watches and I love cars, and I've learned how to minimize depreciation and be able to buy what I want. Right. And so, if you like handbags, buy some nice Chanel or Hermes that doesn't go down in value and buy it secondhand. If secondhand is cheaper than new, because sometimes you get premium on them. If you like clothes, buy some nice designer clothes, but buy them vintage or buy them in the sales. I love Alexander McQueen, and I buy it through the company, and I also try and buy them when
Mhm.
they have their yearly sale. Buying them through the company is something I figured out how to do. Get your own
Nice.
tax advice, by the way, and that saves me half. And then if I can get the
Mhm.
40% off, that saves me nearly half again.
For cars, do you like old school or do you like new
I
school?
like both. So I have a
Both. Okay.
Ferrari Testarossa. I have a 1989 Porsche 911 Turbo. I also
Nice.
have a new model Aston Martin DBS. I have the Aventador. Just bought the new RSQ8, which is basically the Lamborghini Urus, but
You and Andrew Tate should be hanging out more often.
yeah, yeah. We talk quite a lot, and he
That's good.
messaged me when I got the Aston, and he was like, he just went DBS animal. Um, yeah, he loves them. I've got an Ariel Atom, which is a street legal race car.
Mhm.
Mark, my business partner and I are looking into a new 911 Turbo S. We just want the second-hand premiums to come down a bit. Look,
Right.
cars aren't everything to everyone. Fine, don't buy a car or buy a Tesla or whatever. But be honest with yourself as well. People say, "Oh, I'm not interested in cars. Look at that guy bragging about the 7 cars he's got." Yeah, but do you want a shit one or a nice one? Even if you're not
Right.
interested in cars, maybe you want a nice luxury, a luxurious saloon car, family car, or
Right.
a nice big 4x4.
I think it's good for people to find something they're passionate about and try to make that an appreciating asset of some kind. For
Yes.
example, like my buddy loves comic books. He has thousands. A lot
And
of
I
them
bet
go
he's
up in
made
value
money
throughout
out
it.
of buying good second-hand ones.
Yeah, good comic ones. If you get them at the right price for the person who
Yeah.
just doesn't want them, you can make great money from them. And that's with anything. I mean, you can go to books, you can go to comic books, you can go to clothes. There's all types of things. I think that people, because there's so many distractions, so much going on in the world, they're not like as creative as maybe less creative than they once were. So
Yeah.
they're not thinking about, well, I have this passion. I love clothes. I love watches. You name it. Why don't I get serious about this collection? I enjoy it, but also make some money off it as well. Make it into a side hustle, passion,
Yeah.
something.
Or at the very least, minimize the depreciation. So as I've
Right.
got more wealthy, I buy less things. I just am more
Hmm.
selective and buy more expensive, less things. So I actually
You're
buy
right.
less clothes and less things than when I was broke. It's just
Hmm.
now I buy McQueen on top, Armani on the bottom, Christian Louboutin on the feet. I go IWC Big Pilots or Patek or AP or
Hmm.
Rolex or Richard Mille on the watches. I
Hmm.
buy, Lamborghini, Porsche, Ferrari. I don't buy many things, but I buy the things I like and I learn about them. My sunglasses, I have a few
Right.
pairs. I only buy the Cartier sunglasses.
Hmm.
And, you can pick these up used, and all right, they're 1,000 quid new, but you pick them up used to 600 quid, and you could have them for 3 years and sell them for 500 quid. And they're
Right.
good.
Right.
They're actually really good instead of just buying cheap shit, which from
Right.
Primark, which every 3 months you've got to replace.
Yep. Yep. There's a big difference. Now, I know you love your cars, you love your watches. Well, I have two questions in mind. One, of your businesses, which one are you the most passionate about? Which one are you the most proud of? And which one do you enjoy doing the most? Because from what I know, you have your training, you have your real estate, you have the podcast, you have two podcasts, you're writing the books, you have a lot going on. What, like, do you not do the most, but what draws your attention and you're like, you're sold to it?
Yeah, I think probably either the podcast or the educational content,
Yeah?
because I meet
Okay.
really amazing people and I'm able to change people's lives in the most direct way. Look, I've got
Hmm.
1,350 tenants and I feel grateful for that. But I can impact 13.5 million people potentially with education. I can't
Right.
impact 13.5 million tenants. There's only 2.5 million of them in the UK.
Hmm.
So, look, I love my portfolio and it makes me a lot of money. One of them makes me 120,000 gross a month. And it makes more than half that net. Um,
Hmm.
but what I like to do with my time is the content, the education, the podcast,
Hmm.
the social media. Yeah.
Is there out of the people you've interviewed, another compliment as well, some amazing people, a variety of boxing. It seems like you really like boxing as well. I've noticed because you've gone through with quite a few different boxers and you did it yourself. Which is there any that have been less glorious, I guess you could say, or less of a oh my god, it's Mayweather. Oh my god, it's your name. Have any of them been like that where you're just like this is not what I expected?
Um, Less glorious and not what I expected. Probably a bit different.
Okay.
So less glorious, I would say, was Mark Ormrod, who's a triple amputee,
Hmm.
and Craig, what's his surname? Craig Harrison, who has the world record for the longest snipe kill. To me, both of
Nice.
those were emotional and jaw-droppingly humbling
Hmm.
interviews. So they were ones that it wasn't Floyd Mayweather or Game of Thrones
Right.
actresses or Andrew Tate or Jordan
Hmm.
Peterson. You know, they were just more ordinary
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Um, and you'd have to listen to them to know why. But
Right.
basically, how extreme their lives have been gives you a great sense of context
Right.
that you should be grateful for your own life. In terms of unexpected, it was Chris Eubank,
That's
famous
why I keep
boxer.
hearing Chris Eubank
Yeah, because
was.
he was just fucking weird and combative and weird and
And I listened to your interview. I forgot with the man we mentioned earlier with Chris Eubank and other people. Do you often? I'm curious. Do you think most of the time they're like their transparent real selves, or is it more facade? Like for example, with Andrew Tate, while he gets hate, he gets a lot of love. Andrew Tate, I actually see almost all the time he's not really a character. He's very genuine, very honest, very himself. It seems like. Do you see that across the board, or is it 50-50? What's your experience with like them being who they actually are in camera versus off?
most of my guests, I would say, are pretty authentic. I probably
Pretty
wouldn't choose them
authentic.
if they weren't.
Right.
Um, Chris Eubank, I don't know. It was a
Hmm.
combination of being bashed in the head for 20 years, probably not very well in other areas, and maybe stoned.
Hmm.
And he's an eccentric personality anyway. So
Right.
you add those four things together, like it shouldn't really have been a surprise that it was
Hmm.
weird. Um, yeah,
Mostly.
virtually none of my guests are like, oh, edit that out, edit that out, edit that out. I don't like that. I don't want
Right.
that.
Right.
We get it occasionally, and that doesn't quite feel
Hmm.
genuine. I mean, Andrew Tate, I felt was very comfortable and authentic
Hmm.
in himself. One thing I will say is, just before the cameras went on, he definitely raised his energy, and it was
Oh,
like
right. To get
a
ready.
switch. Ah, rah.
Really?
He knew how to turn it on. Yeah, which
Yeah. Yeah.
you're there to put on a show.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, what's your guest too? Or not actually? What's your guest from? What's to come, or who hasn't been on yet? Is there anyone you haven't had on that you've been like, if I had this person on, it would be my I want them on, but you haven't been able to, or maybe they're still yet to come for potential guests.
Oh, I mean, there's loads.
There's
Arnold
loads. Who's
Schwarzenegger, Donald Trump, Bill
yeah.
Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, Oprah Winfrey, Meghan Markle. You fucking name it. Um, yeah, there's loads. Obviously, anyone who's very successful, I'm allured to. Anyone
Right.
who's very topical and of the moment or wildly viral.
Yep.
And we're chasing down some good leads of some very good guests.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll just continue that pursuit.
Yeah. I'm sure making those happen can be difficult, and there's a few people to go through, and it's a process for sure.
Yeah. Often the harder they are to bag,
Hmm.
the better they are as a guest. Often, not
Hmm.
always.
Right.
Um, you dealing with them or their management is some are great to deal with, some are a nightmare to deal with, and some are anywhere in
Right.
between. Some
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
just so successful right now, you just can't pin them down. Fair
Right. Because
enough.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And as well, I have another question on with all the businesses you have going on, with the books, with you're busy with family, you're busy with the podcast. How do you find time and how do you organize what you're doing so you don't get overwhelmed? Because, like I said, you're a straight shooter, you're authentic, you don't seem very easily discombobulated or irritated. You're very stable. It seems like very, very much so. What keeps you grounded? What keeps you being able to run all this and not go crazy?
Okay. Um, so I choose where I work and when I work.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens that I love to work,
Nice.
but that's not an accident. So I mostly
Mm-hmm.
work from home. I'm mostly around my family, and I'm very
Nice.
grateful for that. And I could have a good high paying job, but I have to commute to London and see my kids very
Right.
rarely. So that's a strategic thing that I've chosen. I can work from
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the world as long as I've got my phone, which is never more than 9 inches from me.
Right.
Or, wait a minute, that's more like 9 inches. Or my laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's strategically designed that way. Uh, in, so I think I've got pretty good balance. I can train anywhere. I was when I was boxing and having to travel, I was training in hotel rooms, doing circuits in
Nice.
hotel rooms. So
Mm-hmm.
we make excuses often. Just make sure that you've got 2 or 3 square meters of space. You can do exercise, and
Right.
you've got a phone or a laptop. You can do work. Now, staying level and grounded, yeah, I definitely am more level and grounded and balanced and in control of my emotions, most of them,
Mm-hmm.
more so than when I was in my mid-20s. And part of that might be age,
Right.
because that's 20 years ago now, and you'd like to think you can master yourself as you get older. Part of that is
Mm-hmm.
the significant investment in myself. I mean, I'd
Right.
have to be an idiot not to make some personal improvements with how much money I've spent on myself, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of therapists and education and mentors and networking. And then also just a sense of life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
being alive is amazing.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. And, having a relative amount of control and money and
Mm-hmm.
success in your own life is amazing. And being able to
Mm-hmm.
self make yourself and become something out of nothing.
Right.
And so, what gives me the right to expect all the upside with none of the downside? It's the
Mm-hmm.
downside that creates the upside, and it's the challenge that creates the solution and the opportunity. So,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I now know I believe in myself. You throw me
Mm-hmm.
any challenge, I believe in myself. So maybe it's a combination of those things. But
Mm-hmm.
every now and again, someone says or does something, and it does piss me off a bit. Um,
You still have some boisterousness in
Yeah,
there
and I
when you
don't
need
want
it.
to lose that. Like, I was
Right.
interviewed before you, and some guy said, "Oh, how'd you feel when you lost to Samuel Leeds in the boxing match?"
I'm like, well,
Uh,
not well.
And I looked at him and I said, "I raised £250,000 for charity. I fought someone 20
Right.
kilos heavier. It was a split
Right.
decision. I threw a lot more punches. I was technically the much better boxer. I was the people's,
You did throw a lot more punches.
yeah, I was the people's
Yeah, I saw that.
champion. I got so much more fit. Where's the defeat there?
Right.
How many
Right.
fights have you had, motherfucker?" Anyway, I tried to
No.
control it, but it's just a question on a podcast. I'm not pissed off about it now, but the point is, um, it's good to be pissed off about some things. If I
It
went
is
into that
good.
fight underprepared and I took
Hmm.
a hammering, I should be pissed off with myself. And
Right.
often,
Right.
anger and being pissed off is a good fuel to change a situation if you're not happy with your situation.
I think so. I think too many people are actually too passive in how they navigate life on a regular basis, and getting pissed off is a good thing entirely
Well,
because
it
it brings about
depends.
like
It depends. Don't
yeah,
don't get pissed off if someone, like, I always let people out in traffic. If someone undercuts me,
right.
after you, sir, after you, madam. I'm not going to get pissed off about that because I'm in a fucking
Hmm.
steel, metal, carbon cage. If I get
Right.
pissed off, I'm pissed off. Me being pissed off doesn't solve the problem. So there's so many
Right.
small, trivial, menial things in life
Yep.
you should stop getting pissed off about. But the meaningful things,
Then
the big
yes,
things,
those
where
are
you
when you
need to
choose.
change. If you're fat as fuck, you should be pissed off.
Yep.
If you're broke, you should be pissed off, but
Pissed
not with the
off.
world, with yourself, and then
Yep.
change it.
That's perfect.
By the way, I have been fat as fuck. And I know you have to be careful what you say nowadays. And by the way, I always
I
support, if
know.
I see a fat person in the gym, you'll never hear me criticizing them. Hats off, fair play. If I see someone broke trying to start a business, you'll never see me criticizing them. Hats off, fair play. At
You're
least they're
you're
trying.
you're at least trying, you're at least doing something to progress your life in some way or another. Even if you fail miserably at it, you're still doing something, which is a lot more than the vast majority of people out there who are too scared to even get the start in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely excellent, my friend.
It's always a pleasure,
You
John. Thanks for having me on. Where are you going to be?
yes.
Where's this going to be going out to the world?
This will be going out to a lot of entrepreneurs, affiliate marketers as well. I guess, do you have a last message on when they can maybe expect your book or anything you want to
Well,
direct them through?
for now, I'd probably go and get my book Money because it's actually out
Okay,
until
awesome.
Money Loves You and Money Matrix come out. And also my
Yes.
podcast Disruptors. You know, we've mentioned that a couple of times. We must be nearly 1,000 episodes in now. We interview movers, shakers, game changers, and change makers.
Thank you so much. Make sure you go visit those places, and I appreciate you again. Very nice to be able to speak to you live.
Cheers, John.